One time she found my dad putting in some subpar ingredients into one of the pies, and she got a bowl of some kind from under the thing, and when my dad wasn't looking, and she hit him on the head with it. He turned around and he was like, "What are you doing?" And he grabbed the pan from her, and she said, "Don't you ever substitute real ingredients, fresh ingredients for these cheap, starches or additives, all the things that we have never put in any of our products, by the way. If you guys stick with me now, I'll stick with you later." He kept his promise. And he always said, "I will never have contracts in my supply agreements. I will always have handshakes, and we will do business on a handshake." So not only do we not have a contract with McDonald's, we still today have handshakes.
Welcome to Business in Families, the podcast where family legacy meets leadership challenges. I'm Alex Mendez, a family enterprise advisor with over 18 years of experience helping business families worldwide navigating the complexities of generational transition, governance, and how they can professionalize themselves. In each episode, you will hear real stories, hard decisions, and valuable lessons from families who, like yours, are working to build trust, grow their companies, and preserve their legacy across generations. If something here resonates with your family or your business, and you'd like to explore it more deeply, I'm here to help you. Let's begin. Today's episode is as inspiring as it is iconic. I'm joined by Paula Marshall, CEO of Bama Companies, the family business behind McDonald's legendary apple pie. What began nearly a century ago with a grandmother baking sweet potato pies to feed her children evolved into a global food empire serving millions around the world. Paula is a third-generation steward of this legacy, grounded in values like quality, trust-based relationship, and long-term vision. This conversation takes us from a humble kitchen in Dallas to a global network of manufacturing plants, with one product standing as a symbol of their story, the apple pie. This episode is one more time an example of what it works and what hurts in the world of family businesses. If anything you hear resonates with you, or you would like to explore your own family or business situation more deeply, I'm here to help. Let's get started. So, Bama, why don't you walk us up through the history of your family? Because your grandparents weren't born in Dallas. They migrated from the center of the U.S. over to Dallas, seeking for a better place to live and earn some money. So it was a different world in the 1920s.
Yes. Well, my grandmother was, according to my dad, was a fiery spirit. And my grandfather was the one that had the dream of living on the farm and raising all these kids to also become farmers. He actually ran for the governor of Texas once. And so, he had different aspirations that popped up at different times. My grandmother was the kind of the solid face of the family. And she decided one day that she was tired of living on the farm, scraping by, selling sweet potatoes and other things that they were trying to grow out there in East Texas, which is really a difficult soil to grow things in. A lot of big evergreen trees grow out there, but not much food is grown there. So my grandma informed him that she was packing up the wagon, taking her 7 children, and she was going to Dallas, and she was going to get a job, and she was going to look for a way to develop a career of some kind. And the only thing she really knew how to do that she was very proud of, that her kids were proud of her for it too, was food, but mostly her pie making ability. So she made sweet potato pie on the farm almost every day for the kids, and I think everything she cooked came out of sweet potatoes. But when she got to Dallas, she moved in with one of her, I think it was a cousin there that had a boarding house. Mm-hmm. And the cousin agreed to rent her a room at the boarding house for her and her 7 children to live in.
That is incredible. Everybody has to remember that in the 1920s was in the verge of having the Big Depression in the States.
Yes.
So she was a really adventurous and the real entrepreneur in your family.
Yes. Well, in 1927, the Great Depression hadn't exactly hit, but it was, money and stocks and things like that my family wasn't really involved in. They were just plain country people, and her family, she came from a very successful cotton farm, and so she knew how to work on equipment. She knew, how to take the cotton and make material out of it. And so she was trying different ways to get my grandfather to look into some different ways of making money. And because he kind of robbed the cradle, I guess. He was 17 or 18 years old, and she was only 14.
No
And they
kidding.
decided to run off and get married. Yeah. So he really wasn't very welcome at her parents' farm after he took my grandmother away. And he was bound and determined they were never going to have to go back there and beg her parents for, for money or a place to stay or anything. I'm going to be able to take care of you. And her name was Alabama. And
Wow.
he called her Bama. And he said, Bama, I'm never going to take you back there. We're never going to go begging to your family. And so I'm going to figure out a way to take care of us. And then she started having all these babies.
Hmm.
And it just became more and more difficult, to make money. So when she got to Dallas, it was in the late 1920s. But it was still a very meager existence. She found the place in town that she wanted to go to work and make her pies.
Hmm.
And that was at the Woolworth drug counter. So Woolworths was a store much like Walmart is today, or
Hmm.
not nearly that big, a small neighborhood stores that carried sundries and also had a restaurant in the back with stools, bar stools, and and people came in for food. And so she went to work for the man there that was running the Woolworths.
Hmm.
And he said, we need a pie maker. We need a good pie maker. So she began making her pies there, but she also cooked all the other food as well.
Hmm.
And one day after she'd been there about year to a little over a year, um, the general manager came and sought her out and asked her to come out to the front of the store with him.
Hmm.
So they walked out to the front of the store, and then they walked around the whole entire building, and there was just people lined up that went all the way around the building there. And she's like, wow, that's really great. It's great for our business.
Hmm.
And he laughed and he said, well, there's only one reason those people are waiting in line, and that's because they want to come in and have some of your food, but they mostly want to come in and have some of your pies.
Wow.
So uh, finally, and she was ecstatic, of course. And so my grandfather had by that time sold their farm and had moved into Dallas
Hmm.
with her and the kids. And they were looking for a place to go, that was going to be their own place. And she was telling my grandfather about this day, and my grandfather was, wheels were turning.
Hmm.
And so he asked her if she would, before she had to go to work every day, if she would make a few pies for
Okay.
him at the house there, and he could take them out and sell them. So he had a little picnic basket, and he made some little shelves for it and put the pies in there, and started out, two or three pies every morning. And then he would sell them within 2 hours, and so he would come back, and then he would get, two more pies the next day. And he just kept saying, Bama, can you make me more? Can you make me more?
Let me stop you there and
Yeah.
make some reflections there. What do you think these adventurous spirit of building something came from your both grandparents? Because
Yeah.
he was a hard worker, adventurous to moving to another city, seven
Yes.
kids.
Yep.
Imagine in the late 20s, another world, and your father
Unbelievable.
was willing to sell his dream of the farm
Mhm.
and then moving to Dallas. But as soon as he got there, he was a businessman that wanted to go and sell things. And that, what do you think that spirit of adventures and entrepreneurship was born in your family and has driven all over the different generations?
Mhm. Well, I think my father probably was driven, or my grandfather was probably, somewhat embarrassed that he hadn't made a living for his wife, and his wife was there in Dallas becoming successful and well known, for her craft.
Mhm.
And he wanted to be a contributor. And so I think the only way what I was told, I only knew my grandfather a very short period of time before he died, but, and I was little, really little. So we didn't have any real meaningful interactions. But, what I felt like that they were doing was, he could sell and he couldn't do anything else around the place. He couldn't fix the equipment like my grandmother could. He couldn't, order the stuff, make the food. He wasn't an organized, person,
Mhm.
but he could walk around and, with his basket full of pies, and he could sell these pies to anybody. And so he had a knack for selling things. And so I think in their combination of what they both brought to the party, they were determined to make something out of my grandmother's abilities. And I have to say, my grandfather was smart enough to realize rather than run off and go, take up with some other person,
Mhm.
he wanted to be with his Bama and he wanted to be with his children. And he figured out a way to, make himself useful, if you will,
Wow.
without being ashamed or embarrassed of it. And so I think as he became more successful in his own right of selling more and
Mhm.
more, because eventually, right out of her kitchen in Dallas, after they finally moved and she got her own home, they bought a route truck. And
Wow.
instead of walking around with a picnic basket, my grandfather loaded up pies from their kitchen every morning, you know, 20 dozen pies. And so eventually she gets all the grandchildren, her daughters and her sons, everyone gets involved in making the pies in the kitchen.
Wow.
And finally, it became so much that they bought another truck. And then they realized, because, can you imagine even doing that today? I mean, the health department, all the rules, the permits, the this, the that, you would never be able to do that
Ever.
today. And in fact, I think it's much harder for just baseline entrepreneurs to start a business today because of all the regulations, and they have to have a lot of capital and a great business plan. And people are more educated today than they were back then. But, they were doing things by the seat of their pants. They didn't really think more than by the end of the week, I have to have this many, or I'm going to go to this grocery store and they're going to want 30 pies. And they just kind of did everything themselves. And the one thing he always depended on my grandmother to do, and what my dad used to tell us stories all the time, quality was job one. That
Okay.
was the number one thing that drove my grandmother. And one time she found my dad putting in some subpar ingredients into one of the pies, and she got a bowl of some kind from under the thing. And when my dad wasn't looking, and she hit him on the head with it. And
No
he said,
kidding.
out of nowhere, my mom hits me on the head with this pan. And he turned around and he was like, "What are you doing?" And he grabbed the pan from her, and she said, "Don't you ever substitute real ingredients, fresh ingredients for these cheap, starches or additives, all the things that we have never put in any of our products, by the way, that's all coming around today to be what everyone wants to eat now is whole food with no chemicals, preservatives, food colors, any of that." And that was my grandmother's whole thing was don't mess up the food with all these strange, ingredients that aren't real.
Yeah, but
And
one
he
thing that
never forgot that.
maybe one thing that you would agree with me is that for your grandparents was a dream they pursued.
Yes.
They were very tenacious.
Yes.
They didn't stop because of a no of somebody that would say, "I won't buy your pies." And that took your, I don't know, I remember the story, but it was your father that went over to Chicago
Yes.
and knocked on the door like your mother went to in Dallas and knocking on the door of the Woolworth. but he went
Yes.
and knocking on the door of McDonald's at that time.
Yes.
And then the story, another piece of the puzzle pulls in and begins a new journey with your dad,
Yes.
Paul.
It was funny. My dad always told me that he felt like his mom and his dad thought too small.
Okay.
And he said they think in terms of route trucks and stores. Route trucks, fresh, running route trucks, and then you have to pick up stales, and there's a lot of issues with, delivering through route trucks. And he wanted his mantra throughout my whole growing up years and my whole adult life, where I finally got to the point where I didn't think he was crazy anymore, was he kept saying, I'm going to find a customer that will buy 1,000,000 pies a day.
Wow,
And
what
that's
a
what
dream.
he set that dream up from the time I was little, because I remember hearing it my whole life, was we'll find a customer that'll buy 1,000,000 pies a day. And I can finally get out of these routes. I can get out of fresh pies. I want to go totally frozen, but I want to do it differently. I want to do it. I don't necessarily want to do it through grocery stores, but I'm going to have to start there. But I really want to find a customer that's going to grow big enough. And he really didn't know what it was. He didn't just have a description. He didn't know. But when he met Ray Kroc, he came back and told my mother, I met the guy that's going to put enough of these stores in that we're going to sell 1,000,000 pies a day.
The guy that invented and developed McDonald's.
Yes, that was him.
So he went over to Chicago with a dream and the persistence of knocking on the door and say, try me. How did that
Absolutely.
happen?
And something that I found very helpful in dreaming and being an entrepreneur and growing a business is having that. I didn't know it at the time, but having that mantra of what will be, what is, and almost like calling that into his reality. And so it became, how I've interpreted it, it's almost like a mystical, spiritual kind of like engaging the whole entire cosmos and the universe in bringing forward what you desire, And I learned so much from my dad, being made fun of, being laughed at. My parents always put me in private schools. My friends always laughed, all their parents were in oil business or whatever. And, we make pies. But at the same token, he didn't even pay any attention to all that. He didn't listen to it. He didn't subscribe to it. He told us not to. And we were never ashamed of what we did, for a living. And I still encounter that today. People will laugh and say, oh my gosh, McDonald's, really? Haven't had one of those pies for 30 years. And I always just say, well, it's time for you to try one again.
Yeah. Fresh, high quality.
Fresh, high quality, no preservatives. And it's only 210 calories.
And it's been like that since the beginning.
Yes, it has.
Now it's going to be, 50 years now? Almost 50
Well,
years.
we're going, our 100th anniversary, of course, is in 2 years, right?
No, I know, but it's going to be 50 years since you began selling to McDonald's.
With McDonald's. I think we're going on 65 now.
Wow. So do you have siblings, Paula?
Well, I did. Unfortunately, one of my oldest brother had a unfortunate accident. He was with his son, and they were in a car accident. And 5 years ago, my middle brother passed. He was a 3-pack a day smoker, for one thing.
Wow.
And some people say smoking doesn't cause cancer or whatever, but he died of throat cancer. And so it finally took him over. So
I'm sorry.
My mom passed about 6 years ago. My dad passed about 15 years ago. So I'm kind of the matriarch now.
So
I'm the older only person left.
We're the same page, my dear.
Yeah.
We're in the same page, exactly. So
something to be said for that, right?
Let me take you a bit back. You told me that your grandma passed away in 1960, around that
Yes,
time. So
before
she didn't
before
see
my
these
dad. Yes.
incredible new customer called McDonald's. And by that
Yes.
time, we have to remember that McDonald's at that time wasn't that famous.
No, in fact, the when my dad started calling on them, they only had, I think there were 15 restaurants.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the dream was that, that Ray was explaining to my dad when they first met was I'm bringing in people from all over the country and we are going to build these stores and we're going to build a lot of them. And that's when my dad came back and was convinced that Ray Kroc was going to be the guy that did this. And
Did,
he
did,
was one of the original suppliers that actually loaned Ray money to finance sometimes to make payroll whenever they got into trouble. And so
wow.
there was about 6 suppliers, and my dad's actually written in a couple of Ray's books called Under the Arches. And those books are all about how the different people that came into his life that helped him keep McDonald's, even when the times were very tough and it was lean and it didn't look like they were going to be able to make payroll. Um, the suppliers rallied. There was some commitments made at that time
Mhm.
by Ray to these different owners of these different companies that if you guys stick with me now, I'll stick with you later.
That's an
I'll
honor, my
stick
dear.
with you later.
And keeping the word.
He kept his promise. And he always said, I will never have contracts in my supply agreements. I will always have handshakes and we will
Wow.
do business on a handshake. So not only do we not have a contract with McDonald's, we still today have handshakes.
No kidding. That's something for everybody here to remember. Honor and the worth of the person is worth a lot more than a contract.
Absolutely. He always said, and my dad operated the same way. He said, shaking a person's hand and looking him in the eye and making that agreement is much stronger than words on a piece of paper.
So how did you, Paula, began your journey in the company of the family? You as a little kid, how was that immersion of you in the company?
Well, my dad golfed. My mom didn't actually have a whole lot of hobbies, except she loved to go to church and she loved to sing and she had friends and they went to lunch and stuff like that. But they worked. I mean, they were busy, 4 o'clock in the morning till, 7 o'clock at night. And they didn't have a lot of time for a lot of other things.
Mhm.
So we were always, I want to say, pleasant memories, dragged down to the company on Saturday and Sunday to actually prepare pies in boxes. Or I can remember my dad standing up uh, Coca-Cola wood cartons that
Mhm.
the Coca-Colas used to come in and they'd set them down on the ground, the glass bottles, they'd load the machines. Well, my dad used to stack those up so I could see over the table
Mhm.
where the little pies were coming down. And I was required to box a pie, box the pies, help box the pies. And so it was never unusual to me to help out in the family business in production or running the retail store on Saturdays, or if they needed to get rid of some things, taking things over to the Goodwill or to, the charities to, some of our damaged products and things like that when I got older and got a driver's license. But the the minute I got in high school, I started losing interest, in the company. I was more interested in sports and boys and parties and, the company didn't hold much allure for me. But I do remember one morning, especially, I think it was probably about 10th grade or so. And my dad had just, engineered with a maintenance guy that worked in the plant. They had hand built this line that we were going to put in to make McDonald's pies because we had grown to the point where he couldn't keep making them and then putting them on racks and rolling them into freezers and bringing them the next day. We needed a continuous production method. And my dad, with this gentleman from who he had worked with this whole career, they built this thing. They welded it, they put it together. I mean, it was like out in this shop that my dad had, and they put it on the line and they put a freezer in. And I remember he was so excited. We got up early that morning to go down to the plant before school. And I can remember just grumbling and what is it we're looking at and why do we have to go? And, Mom, really, what are we going to eat for breakfast? You know how kids are, you're just complaining. And she goes, you guys are going to go down and see our new pie line, whether you like it or not. So off we went and walked down to the plant floor. My dad was down there. The pies were running. They were going into the freezer. It was all one continuous process. Instead of being put in different sections, it was one continuous. And we doubled or tripled our capacity by doing it that way. And I remember my dad telling me that morning, he said, we had to go to the bank and borrow $200,000.
Okay.
And I just remember going, oh my goodness, that sounds like a lot of money, Dad. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, guess who went with us? The McDonald's guys.
No kidding. So they back you up.
They flew in, they met with the bankers. They told the bankers that my dad was legitimate. This was a legitimate product and a legitimate business that they wanted, and they would appreciate it if he could get financing to build this machine.
Imagine if that would be the story right now.
Oh,
So many small companies that are struggling for loans at the banks, and nobody believes in them.
It's very uncommon now. It was then. Even as recently as in 1994, when I worked with McDonald's to develop this ready-to-bake biscuit.
Okay.
And McDonald's was very active with our lenders, with us getting the money to, probably not unlike what my dad had gone through. For that amount of money for them was, $200,000 was their house and everything else, savings and everything else. But, when we built our biscuit plant, I had to go to the banks and ask for $40 million. So a little bit different, but the same kind of alliances brought McDonald's to our banks, and we had meeting after meeting. And, bankers want assurances. They want to know that you're going to be around. You can pay the money back. And they give I give them all the credit for helping us build the plants that ultimately made their biscuits.
But
Still
what is incredible, Paula, is that you're third generation,
Mm-hmm.
and McDonald's has evolved as long as
Yes.
you have evolved, and you still have the same values of the
Yes.
honor and the shake hand, and that your worth is worth much more than any contract after many, many years. And what you're
Mhm.
telling me, and I'm interpreting, is that McDonald's is the same in that sense. So did you have the opportunity along the years to show the same support to some of your suppliers that have helped
Absolutely.
you grow as a company?
Absolutely. We do long-term supply agreements, handshakes. We have probably 100 suppliers. I'd say 75 to 80 of them have been with us since the very beginning. Our apple suppliers are critical, our fruit suppliers, our flour suppliers. It's, the amount of partnership that we do in our own supply chain is second to none. And so I like to say we carry things forward because we've been treated very well by them and also by our other customers that we have today too. I mean, Yum Brands is a wonderful organization. We've developed pizza with Pizza Hut over the years. We make products for Taco Bell and KFC. And they're also very, very wonderful people. So I think the reason why I love quick service industry, QSR, so much is because of the loyalty, because of the long term. When a company is putting something on their menu, it's possible that it becomes, a fan favorite or iconic. Like much of the time in the media, our products are referred to as iconic. And so when you're doing those kinds of things for big brand names and multinational companies, I go back to that thing my grandmother taught me, and that is quality is job one. And if you make the right products and you make them consistently and you train your people right, you teach your people right things, success will come. And you've got to, be able to figure out which customers are your success and which ones you're kind of spinning your wheels on.
Mhm.
And you sort of want to take those wheel spinners and push them away over time and focus on the customers that are loyal to you, that you have good relationships with, that you can just, you can knock down anything they ask you to do, and you do it. And those are consistent messages. We did my parents, obviously, they loved retail. They started out in it. My grandmother's 3-inch pecan pie was our, like Bimbo is now in Mexico. And we had a small slice of that kind of business, routes and cakes and things like that. And over time, in talking with my parents, just the way the retail business operates versus the way that the QSRs operated, more of a partnership approach, longer term approach, lower returns, no question about it, but you don't have to spend all the money on marketing, advertising, and all the churn, that goes on in the retail food business. So I've just tried to say to people, find your McDonald's, find your company that will allow you to make a nice profit, and that you have a partnership approach with, and make a quality product every day. And I tell them everything, what the products cost, and we share open books, and we all know what each other's doing. And
Let me dig into something that it's worries a lot of the business in families that I see all over the world, is the transitions from one generation to the other. And the figures they disappear because they don't make the agreements, so they don't have the same vision and all that. How was that you took over as CEO of the company in the 80s?
I officially took over in 91, 92 timeframe.
Okay.
But we went through 2 or 3 kind of really, I would say, stressful,
Okay.
because the McDonald's adjustments hadn't occurred yet when my dad started having some health issues.
Mhm.
And I had been at the company for 6 or 8 years, but I had been under, I'd worked with dad on different projects, but I wasn't the out front person. And so when my dad started getting sick, and he wasn't around as much and couldn't travel as much, my mom, started kind of asking me or my brothers to do stuff. And my dad would say, why don't you guys do this and that? And I think it made the McDonald's folks a little uncomfortable. Like, well, where's Paul? What's going on? Let's see what's happening here. And I think at a point in time, my oldest brother, also was not up to where he should have been physically either. And he and my dad both had heart attacks within 6 months of each other.
Like a
And
perfect
so
storm.
nothing like pressing forward, the next generation. When number 1 and number 2 both go out, it became, a very big deal in McDonald's, a lot of discussions.
Mhm.
And I was beginning to work with some of what I would call the lower level. I was exposed to some of the senior guys, but not as much as I was the people in sort of the middle that were sort of the new up and coming folks.
Mhm.
And when they started seeing less of my dad and less of my brother because they knew about the health issues. They were worried, and they started sending in some people that from other suppliers to talk to my dad about selling the company.
Okay.
And so I went through about a 2-year transition with McDonald's. One, on the one hand, was them kind of saying, no, this isn't going to work. And another transition on the other side, unbeknownst to me, that some of the newer supply chain guys were interested in diversity, or they were interested in, developing some different types of humans than just men, and mostly white guys. I mean, I'll just be honest. It was, pretty much the supply community was owned all by men, and pretty Caucasian.
Okay.
So the first stop for me was I fortunately had built an alliance with some of the younger supply chain guys who were very excited about me coming up. And they made it their job, and they made it their stand that they took with the senior level supply chain guys is we're going to put our money on her. We want to stop all this conversation between you and Paul about selling the company, because we think it would be great if we had a woman CEO at some point. That took some doing, because then we needed to become certified as a woman-owned business. That required my dad to give up 49%. I had to flip with him, right? Stock. And then my mother, of course. So my mother convinced him that it would be she and we needed to own the 51%, and then he needed to own the 49. And he basically reluctantly agreed, but didn't reluctantly agree, was actually in favor of it the whole time.
Okay.
So he actually then came and had some meetings with the McDonald's guys and said, this is going to be good for you guys. Let's let her have a go at it.
So the vote of confidence.
Well, it was kind of yeah.
But the other thing that
I've run out of children. I don't have any more, so she's it.
Yeah, but the other thing that I'm interpreting right here is that you build relationship with the lower part of the supply chain, and they knew you were up to the task.
Yes. And they had been to visit me, and they had been working on actually some projects with me, and they were very pleased with my work. And so they were happy to go and put on a case with the higher level people, which also included, the Fred Turners of the world, and some top guys who were on the board of directors and who had to really approve this. And so it was the first time in the company history that they had a woman running one of their suppliers. And so it was, it's crazy deal that they were so involved in it that it was quite shocking. But at the end of the day, we all got there. Everybody was pleased the fact that I had worked hard to get my dad, and that mom and I were going to do this. And they knew that mom wasn't really going to be doing it. Mom was, hoisting me up so I could do more and more and more. And she was always there as my confidant, my advisor. We worked together for at least 20 years on every single aspect of the company. And like I say, she never wanted to quit working either. My mom used to tell me every day of my life that I'm going to be chairman of the board of Bama until I'm in my casket. So that's what happened.
So you talk about the board. When did your family or you began putting some governance structures in place to help you run? And at this point in the 90s was a huge company.
Yeah, at your conference, Alex, we talked about some of the help that I was able to get from, family business, the associations and the magazine and all of that, because you're you've only known one way of doing something, and it's always been in a room with your dad and your mom and, brothers if they were there. If they weren't there, it was just you guys and a few trusted associates that helped him run the plant here. But remember, we only had the one plant and we made a lot of stuff out of this one plant. We made a lot of stuff. But until we built our Bama Foods factory, that was only the second manufacturing operation that we ever had.
Okay.
And so doing that was a huge undertaking that my dad didn't trust at all. And he wanted no part of any of the new operation. So he stayed off to the side. My mom made an investment, what she called her money. And then we got investments from Bama, this plant. We were able to use some of the money there. And then the rest of the money we borrowed from the banks. So it was a highly leveraged deal. And my dad was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to take my little nest egg and I'm going to Florida. You guys can have that biscuit thing. So, but it's been one of the greatest things we've ever done is to get into the breakfast category, getting into the quick service restaurant, into that biscuit world. And it's a very popular sandwich here in the United States, and almost everybody eats them, all the time. So gave us a center of the plate product. And then in 2017, we built onto that factory and we built a pancake line or a hot cake line.
Wow.
So we also now make the hot cakes for McDonald's too.
And you now have facilities over in China and Poland. And
in Wales, our newest facilities in Wales, in Pontypool, in Wales. And we supply. We have what we call our 3 anchor customers, and one of them is Pizza Hut or Yum Brands. One of them is McDonald's, and one of them is Subway now in Europe.
Okay.
We produce a fair amount of the Subway bread in Europe. So they're our anchor customers, and then we sell a whole lot of other people that we don't consider, anchor customers, but are wonderful customers, but just not customers that we would strategically go borrow money and build a plant for. So that's how we kind of differentiate between strategic partners and then kind of like everybody else. Would you borrow money and build a factory for this company? And I can tell you a lot of people ask me, well, you guys do a lot of business with Walmart. And I'm like, yes, we do, but they're not strategic. And they're like, well, why? And I said, because I would never go to the bank and borrow money and put a line in for them because they might change the day after tomorrow.
And they are a family business, although they're public, but they're really run by the family.
They are. The Walton family is still in charge. That's absolutely right.
With different values. No, I don't say bad ones, but both companies have different values.
Different, right? And that's why I don't say it lightly that they're not strategic. And I think they know they're not strategic. They don't really want to be strategic because they don't like having those anchors on them, because sometimes a product may not sell and they need to be able to go over here, and do something different. And I understand that. What we make for them is a bag biscuit in a bag under their great value label. And we're very happy doing just that one SKU. Yeah. And we don't do anything else for them.
And learning from the past, two things. What are you doing different in order for a seamless transition of yourself, maybe to your kids, or maybe to an outside CEO? What are you doing so it wouldn't be bumpy like the one with your dad?
Yeah.
And my second question would be, does your board help you tackle all these challenges in that time? Because most of the families that I work with, or I talk to more than work with, is that they're hesitating to put a board because they're going to lose control or whatever. What could you share in those two senses? First, transition, and second, the governance part of it.
Yeah. Well, the transition has mainly been something I have been thinking about for many years. My dad was always with any of the family, open doors. My mom was always close the doors. Less family's better, more family bad. My dad was more family good, less family bad. So I say where I've come down is somewhere in the middle. So I have internships going. I have a lot of my little nieces and nephews have applied here. They've worked summer jobs here. Some of them don't want to come back. Some of them do. But the succession for me now, with me being the sole shareholder at this point, is that, my son, and what I've always told my children is, unless you have a passion for this business, I don't want you here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I think that's how my mom and dad could have, if they could have, stated it in words, it would have been something like that. Because you want the family here if they have passion. If they don't have passion and they're just coming here and stamping a stamp, they can go somewhere else. And so I think by putting that line in, what we've been able to do is get the girls that don't have an interest, because I have two girls and one son. The girls are pursuing other interests,
Other passions.
other passions. And they will tell you quite frankly that they've never had a passion for the company. My son, on the other hand, has been the one that's followed me to work, has come here, has worked all over the company, been here for 10 years, worked in the plants, knows everybody, worked through college. His goal in life has always been to come here and eventually, work with me and be the transition plan. Now that puts our our woman-owned a little bit in jeopardy. We have some plans for that, in that we have a lot of girls around, and we can make, a shareholder group that's mostly women.
Mm-hmm.
And my son can be running the company for the shareholders. And so that's how, we will accomplish that for the next generation down.
So you've done some things in order to teach your daughters to be good owners for the future.
Yes.
Along,
Yes.
because when you're not here, and we're not going to be here maybe in the next 20 years, they're going to be a sibling
Yes.
partnership.
They will all be together.
They're going to have to make decisions together
Yes.
to take this company to the next levels.
Yes.
So you've done your homework in that sense.
Yes. I made sure that we can carry forward our women-owned business strategy. And that's very important. And that the person who wants to run the company, who's always run the company, who through no fault of his own is just not a gender that can be certified as a woman-owned business. But we have a good cadre of women here that really understand what it takes to run this company, and they're not willing to make all those sacrifices, but they are willing to be part of the ownership group and carry forward the women-owned mantra.
What about governance in terms of the board? Has it helped you? How did that journey of putting a board together begin? While your dad was still alive, or that's a journey that you began yourself?
We didn't really. And I went the route, Alex, to be honest, of advisory board.
Yeah.
So we have assembled a group of advisors from the industry that have a lot of industry knowledge and are very up on what's going on, and they come in, and we're all together in the meeting. So they know my family, they know, and we've all been together for a number of years. Here again, I don't believe in, turning over board members, every 3 years or anything like that. So we have 5, 7-year board terms, 10-year board terms, and we talk things through, and we talk about issues. They're in every part of our board meetings, our financials, our discussions on transitions, our meetings with the family. And to me, it's been a real blessing to have the outside views and the outside vision. And I think when you get to the point where you're making agreements for them to be actual boards with board authority, and that's a slipperier slope to me, because I feel like I'm here every day and I know what's best for the organization. I feel like, my family who's here every day will know that. So we have not made a formal board of directors at this point, but our advisors are paid like they're compensated like a board of directors. We have small advisory groups and get-togethers, and we seek each other out for different different problems and to discuss different things. So, and we have over the past 10 years had different outside managers that I brought in and tried to make it work here. But there's one thing I found that doesn't mix very well, and that's a corporate Fortune 500 culture mixed with our family culture. And that part has not worked well for me. And I don't have any of those people here now because they tried to change my culture, and that's a problem.
That's one of the uniqueness of your company, the culture and the values of
Absolutely.
of itself.
And when they come in with these Fortune 100 values, which are a lot of rating and ranking of people and a lot of, fire the bottom 10% every year and all that kind of stuff, those things change corporate culture. And people get more afraid because, it's random. You could just end up on the bottom 10% in a year just as a random thing, and maybe you worked as hard as you did the previous year, but this year for some reason you ended up in the bottom 10%.
Yeah.
And you lose your job. So I have resisted all of that and tried to make sure when these people came in that they knew that that was not going to be tolerated or allowed. And after a while they violated those agreements and those terms, and I had to come back in and say this isn't for you. So that's the one reason I have to let people go. That's really the only reason. We're pretty open on things have to get done, and we talk a lot about board performance is a little bit iffy for me, but just partnership with the company and making sure we advance our cause. But other than that, there's not much people leave Bama for. I just had my Circle of Excellence dinner, which is where we celebrate our 20-year team members and hire. And our longest team member is 50 years.
Wow.
Of service. And we have over 150, almost 200 people there now, out of our Tulsa workforce, which is about 1,000 people. So you can see that culture is very prevalent here, and it is nothing to mess around with. And we want people to come and we want them to stay. And we feel like that loyalty is why we can bet on our quality so much, is because we teach people and we keep them around a long time. So the business really does keep going and keep growing. And it's not about getting rid of the long-term people. We're like, stay as long as you want,
I'm sure you're going to be here for a long time, and you're going to be like your mom. You're going to be part of the chairman of the board.
That's what I always tell my son.
Until the casket.
That's what I tell my son. I'm like, I'm going to be here a long time.
You're not going to be able to get rid of me that easy.
Right. Don't get your britches too big, right?
What is the position of your son now in the company?
We just made him a vice president, and he is over sales, marketing, and our research and development.
Incredible. So what are the lessons that you can share with the audience along these 100 years that you would say, families, take a pick to these things. Don't make those same mistakes.
Yeah, there's so many lessons. Oh my goodness. And one of the things that comes to my mind for families, is that if everyone can find their passion and work on their passion, some people love the lab and they just want to work in the lab and they don't want to do anything else. And when we try to push those people too high in a company and we put pressure on them. I always just try to find the passion. Where is the person passionate? Where do they love? What are they going to work on no matter rain or shine? I'm not going to have to call them and find out where they are. They're not going to be not showing up in an empty office. They're doing something worthwhile and they're doing something. And I always feel like you can find some part of every person's passion. You just have to talk to them and you just have to find it. I find so many families that are arguing all the time and they're fighting. And, my philosophy is the world is just too small and too short, to spend your whole life doing that. And another thing I did, and I know a lot of people think I'm crazy, but we worked on buyout packages for family members that didn't want to be here anymore. And I think that's really important, is to try to figure out a way out of some of these companies. If I don't have the passion, I'm not showing up, I'm not fulfilled, I really want to go do something else. Why can't we figure out a way to put a buyout package together and let those people go? Let them go and do something they love, and that their life can be more fulfilled than staying here and fighting with me,
And maintaining the harmony of the family, because if
Right.
they have a package of a way out, they feel that they're taking in account.
Exactly. And a lot of times that fighting just takes a toll. It takes a toll on the parents. It takes a toll on the other siblings, takes a toll on the next generation. And overall, it's not good for a business to not be in harmony, as you know. I mean, you need harmony around you so that everyone can work for a higher purpose. And if we're just here because we're made to be here, because somebody's got a stick over us, I like to find a way out of that type of situation. And usually it involves coming together, making an agreement on a buyout, and let's try to figure out a way to get that done.
Well, Paula, thank you very much for sharing this incrediable story.
Well, thank you.
One last question would be, where do you see Bama in the next 100 years?
Well, I think there might be more plants. I think we'll still be in business with our core customers. We're still going to be making products. We're so partnered in with so many of our customers. They come to us when they're growing also. So you see, 3 to 6% growth every year out of all your customers. At some point, you're going to be in a position to do more and to build another line or to buy another site and put something in. And you have to pay attention to the trends and where things are going and try to be in front of all that and make quality job one.
Well, thank you very much. Next time, listeners and viewers, you try an apple pie from McDonald's.
Yes.
Or a biscuit from
yes.
any part of the world, thinking of a Bama dynasty that is behind that with quality and with a shared purpose and a culture behind it. Thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you calling me.
Paula's story offers timeless lessons for family businesses. A single product, McDonald's apple pie, can become the global catalyst for global growth. Quality and integrity are non-negotiable. Quality is job one. It's not just a motto, it's a legacy. Trust-based relationship like Bama's with McDonald's can last over 60 years with no contract, just a handshake. Female leadership is built through credibility, persistence, and vision. Real legacy is not about control. It's about relating those with passion set up and creating dignified exits from those who don't belong in the business. Each episode is a window into what works and what hurts in the world of family businesses. Thank you for listening. See you next time in Business in Families.